"I never asked to be anyone's hero," James whispered, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his military cap. But when those three little girls looked at me with such fear in their eyes, something inside me, something I thought had died in Kandahar, came roaring back to life. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Sometimes family isn't about blood. Sometimes it's about who stands between you and the world when the world turns cruel. If you're touched by this story of unexpected courage and connection, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that remind us of the extraordinary moments hiding in ordinary days. The Corner Café had been James Mercer's sanctuary for precisely 2 years, 3 months, and 14 days. That's how long it had been since he'd returned from his final deployment with Delta Force, and how long since the car accident that took his wife, leaving him to raise their daughter Lily alone. Every Tuesday and Thursday, while Lily attended her after-school art program, James would claim the small table by the window, order a black coffee, and lose himself in the comforting anonymity of being just another patron. No one here knew about the nightmares that still jolted him awake at 3 a.m. No one knew about the medals locked away in his desk drawer. And no one certainly knew how terrified he was of failing his daughter. Today was no different. James sat with his back to the wall, old habits die hard, nursing his coffee and watching raindrops race down the windowpane. The cafe was busier than usual, the autumn downpour driving people indoors. He barely registered the bell above the door jingling until he heard them, 3 identical voices, high-pitched and breathless with panic. "There he is. Daddy." James looked up, startled, as 3 little girls, identical triplets with copper-colored braids and freckled faces, rushed toward his table. They couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. The smallest one reached him first, throwing her arms around his waist while the other 2 crowded close. "We've been looking everywhere for you, Daddy," said the tallest, her voice carrying unnaturally. Her eyes, wide and green, held a desperate plea. James froze, his military training kicking in as he scanned the cafe. Near the entrance stood a man, mid-30s, expensive watch, angry flush creeping up his neck as he surveyed the room. When his gaze landed on the girls, his lips curled into something that made James's skin crawl. The middle triplet leaned in, her voice barely audible. "Please pretend you're our dad. Just for a minute. He's been following us since the library." James didn't hesitate. 15 years in special operations had taught him to assess and act. He gently ruffled the smallest girl's hair and smiled broadly. "There are my girls. I was wondering where you'd run off to." His voice carried across the cafe, warm and natural. "Did you find those books you wanted?" The man by the door hesitated, his certainty visibly wavering. "Sorry we're late," the tallest girl played along, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "The librarian helped us find extra books about butterflies for our project." James nodded, sliding his chair back. "Well, I ordered hot chocolates for all of you. They should be ready at the counter." He stood, his 6'3" frame unfolding to its full height. The movement was casual, but there was nothing casual about the way he positioned himself between the girls and the stranger. The man at the door took a half-step forward, then stopped as James looked directly at him. There was nothing overtly threatening in James's stance, just the quiet confidence of someone who had faced down far worse threats in far more dangerous places. The stranger's gaze flickered, then dropped. A moment later, he turned and left, the bell jingling in his wake. James waited until he saw the man cross the street before turning back to the girls, crouching down to their level. "Is he gone?" whispered the smallest one, her eyes huge in her pale face. "He's gone," James confirmed gently. "Are you 3 okay? Do you need to call your parents?" The middle triplet bit her lip. "Our mom's at work. She's a nurse at Memorial. We were supposed to wait at the library until our aunt picked us up, but she texted she'd be late, and then that man started talking to us and following us, so we ran here because it was close and there are always people," finished the tallest. James nodded, making a quick decision. "How about this? I really will get you those hot chocolates, and you can sit with me until your aunt arrives." Would that be okay? 3 identical nods answered him. As they settled at his table with steaming mugs, James learned their names: Emma, the tallest, Olivia, the middle, and Sophie, the smallest. They were 8 years old, in 3rd grade, and their mother, Dr. Rebecca Chen, was a single parent too. Our dad left when we were babies, Emma explained matter-of-factly. Mom says he wasn't ready to be a father. James felt a familiar ache. Being a parent is the hardest job there is, he said quietly. But walking away is never the answer. Sophie studied him with solemn eyes. Do you have kids? One daughter. Lily. She's 11. Where is she? Olivia asked. Art class. I pick her up in, he checked his watch, about 30 minutes. The conversation flowed easily after that. James found himself smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks as the triplets debated the merits of different butterfly species and whether dragons could theoretically exist. He was so engaged that he didn't notice the cafe door opening again until a harried-looking woman rushed toward their table. Girls. Thank God. The woman, presumably their aunt, gathered all 3 into a fierce hug before turning to James with tears in her eyes. The librarian told me what happened. She saw them run out and was about to call the police when I arrived. I can't thank you enough for helping them. James shook his head. They helped themselves. Smart girls you've got there. After the aunt had thanked him profusely and led the triplets away, but not before they'd extracted a promise that he'd be at the cafe next Tuesday so they could meet Lily, James sat back down, his coffee long cold. He was still processing what had happened when a voice interrupted his thoughts. Quite the hero act. James looked up to see a man in an expensive suit standing by his table, a sneer playing at his lips. He recognized him vaguely, a regular who usually sat in the corner tapping importantly on his laptop. Excuse me? James said. Those little girls. The damsel rescue. Very touching. The man's voice dripped with condescension. Let me guess, single dad playing superhero to impress the ladies? The whole military posture thing is a bit much, don't you think? James felt a familiar coldness settle over him, the calm that had served him well in combat. I'm not looking for trouble. No, of course not, the man continued, raising his voice slightly so nearby tables could hear. Just another washed-up vet living off taxpayer dollars, pretending to be relevant. Those kids probably made up the whole story for attention. Several patrons were watching now, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. James remained still, his expression neutral. He'd faced worse than this entitled bully. Nothing to say, the man pressed, clearly enjoying the audience. Maybe you're not such a tough guy after all. Just another deadbeat dad playing dress-up, that's enough. The new voice came from behind the counter. Maya, the cafe owner, stepped forward, her dark eyes flashing. James has been coming here for years, and he's never been anything but respectful. Which is more than I can say for you, Mr. Davidson. The man, Davidson, flushed. I was just leaving, Maya finished firmly. And don't bother coming back. Davidson looked around, expecting support, but found none. With a final glare at James, he gathered his things and stormed out. The cafe settled back into its comfortable hum. An elderly woman at the next table reached over and patted James's hand. My Harold was in Vietnam. Never talked about it either. Good men rarely do. James nodded his thanks, embarrassed by the attention but touched nonetheless. Maya brought him a fresh coffee. On the house. And just so you know, those little girls were right to trust you. We all see it, even if you don't. See what? James asked. Maya smiled. That beneath all that quiet, there's someone worth knowing. The following Tuesday, James arrived at the cafe with Lily in tow. His daughter had been skeptical about meeting the triplets, but her curiosity won out. Dad, are you sure they're actually identical? Lily asked as they claimed their usual table. Like, exactly the same? James smiled. In looks, yes. But they're very different people. The bell jingled, and the triplets burst in, followed by a woman James assumed must be their mother. Dr. Chen was striking, tall and elegant even in scrubs, with the same copper hair as her daughter's, though hers was cut in a practical bob. Introductions were made, children began chattering excitedly, and James found himself sitting across from Rebecca Chen, both of them watching the impromptu friendship unfold. My sister told me what you did, Rebecca said quietly. Thank you isn't enough. James shook his head. Your daughters are brave. They saved themselves. They knew who to ask for help. That's what matters. She studied him with intelligent eyes. They haven't stopped talking about you. The girls don't trust easily, not since their father left. Neither does Lily, James admitted. Her mother died 2 years ago. Car accident. Rebecca's expression softened. I'm so sorry. We're managing. One day at a time. Their conversation was interrupted by Davidson's return. The man stopped short when he saw James, his face darkening. This time, he wasn't alone, 2 equally well-dressed friends flanked him. Well, look who's back playing family man, Davidson sneered, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Collected a few more strays, I see. James felt Lily stiffen beside him. The triplets fell silent, their eyes wide. Rebecca started to rise, but James gently touched her arm. It's okay, he said quietly, before standing to face Davidson. You've got a problem with me, that's fine, James said, his voice low and controlled. But these are children. Walk away. Davidson smirked at his friends. Or what? You'll go all soldier boy on me? I'm not scared of some PTSD basket case. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, witnesses would disagree on the details. James moved with the fluid precision that had once made him legendary among his Delta Force teammates. There was no aggression, no raised voice, just deliberate movement that somehow resulted in Davidson stumbling backward into his friends, all 3 of them suddenly eager to leave. My dad was Delta Force, Lily announced proudly as the door closed behind the retreating bullies. He has medals he keeps in a drawer because he says the real heroes never came home. James felt his face heat as 7 pairs of eyes turned to him, 4 children and 3 adults, as Maya had emerged from behind the counter. You never mentioned that, Rebecca said softly. James shrugged uncomfortably. It's not something I talk about. Well, I think it's awesome, Emma declared. Like having our own superhero. Can we see your medals sometime? Olivia asked. Do you know how to throw ninja stars? Sophie added. Girls, Rebecca admonished gently, that's not something we should ask about. James surprised himself by laughing. No ninja stars, I'm afraid. But I do make pretty good pancakes. If you all wanted to come over for breakfast sometime. The invitation hung in the air, unexpected and sincere. James hadn't opened his home to anyone since Sarah died. Rebecca's smile was warm. We'd like that very much. 6 months later, the corner cafe remained James's sanctuary, but he was rarely alone there anymore. Tuesday afternoons had become a standing date, for children doing homework while 2 adults shared the comfortable silence of people who understood each other's scars. The triplets had adopted Lily as their honorary big sister, and Lily had blossomed under their adoration. James watched his daughter laugh, really laugh, for the first time in years and felt something tight in his chest finally begin to loosen. Penny for your thoughts, Rebecca said, sliding into the chair beside him. James smiled. Just thinking about how things change. 6 months ago, I was sitting here alone, convinced that was how it had to be. And now? Now I'm wondering if you and the girls would like to come camping with us next weekend. Lily's been asking. Rebecca's hand found his under the table. We'd love to. Later, as they walked home, 7 of them spread across the sidewalk, the children darting ahead, James felt a small hand slip into his. He looked down to find Sophie beside him, her face serious. "Are you glad we pretended you were our dad that day?" she asked. James squeezed her hand gently. "It was the best pretending I ever did." Sophie nodded, satisfied. "Mom says sometimes the best families are the ones we find by accident." Ahead of them, Lily was showing the other triplets how to balance on the edge of the curb, her face alight with joy. Rebecca caught his eye over the children's heads and smiled, a private smile that held promises neither of them was quite ready to name. "Your mom," James said softly, "is a very wise woman." James closed his story, looking into the camera with quiet dignity. That was 5 years ago. Today, those 4 girls are sisters in every way that matters. Rebecca and I got married last spring, with all 4 of them as our bridesmaids. He smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "I spent 15 years in Delta Force, trained to expect the worst in people. It took 3 little girls in a cafe to remind me that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let people in." James adjusted his cap one last time. "So if you're watching this and feeling alone, like I was that day, remember that family can find you when you least expect it. Sometimes all it takes is being the person someone else needs, even if just for a moment." And if you enjoyed this story of how our blended family came to be, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us all that second chances are always possible, even when we think we've lost our way.